And welcome back to Mixed Media Live. It is a good Friday, I think, as good as it can be. A lot of interesting things happening in the world, but I'll leave it there. So Mixed Media is a weekly episode, weekly podcast. Sorry, I'm not 100% today. I'm not 100% on my game today. But Mixed Media is a live podcast happening every week on Friday. And what we do is we talk about art. We talk about art in all of its capacities. We have this new format where we talk about, a topical episode like we normally do, our sort of normal format. We take a topic and we talk about it from a particular perspective, whether that's music, whether that's gaming, whether that's film. And we also have our Arguing with Reddit series, which is where we react to your hot takes we find all over the web. And we just pick them out and react to them live. And the last thing that we do is we review some of your stuff or bring an indie artist online to talk about their stuff. And so, yeah, that's what we do every week. Right now we're missing Ben, but he'll be on the show in looks like 30 minutes. And Ben is our music guy, but I'll introduce myself and then Nathan can introduce himself. So I'm Irving Nestor. I'm a filmmaker and media entrepreneur. I own a company called Ariella. You can find my website at ariella.co. It's the domain that the link belongs to on the left. I'm not sure what it is, actually. I think it's right. Yeah, right side of the screen.
You're right,
yeah. Yeah, to your right. Who are you, Nathan?
I'm a game developer and 3D modeler.
Cool. Yeah, and first of all, I want to shout out to all of our Rumble fans out there. You guys are amazing. Our views on Rumble have been consistently up as of late, and I really like seeing that. We finally got a comment for once from you guys, which was as short as the word nice, which I appreciate because
nice.
We need more comments. We need more comments on our videos. We need you guys to, commenting not only helps us to understand what you like, what you want, what you have to say, what your opinions are, it also helps the algorithms, right? So please comment, and while you're at it, like if you like, dislike if you don't like it. At least that way we understand where people fall, where the chips lie. That being said, if you're on Rumble, I really want to get on Rumble live streaming. I won't pitch it as hard as I did last time, but I didn't pitch it at the beginning last time, so that's what I'm trying to do here. I want to get on Rumble live. Rumble is a growing platform. We are growing on Rumble, and I'm really happy with that, but we're not able to live stream on Rumble. You guys are hearing this, you guys who are hearing this on Rumble, you're hearing this after the live show has actually been recorded. So if you want us to be live on Rumble, please go to mixedmedia.locals.com. That's mixedmedia.locals.com. We only need one supporter at the minimum tier for us to do live streaming on Rumble. And we'll be sure, because you'll be the first one there, we'll be sure to shower you with all the beautiful things that we can possibly think of.
If you don't do it, you'll hear this literally every single time.
Right. If you... Yeah, exactly. Until it's free, which might take a year for Rumble to make live streaming free, which is understandable, right? Like, it's a whole new high bandwidth, thing they're adding to their platform. So they're starting from their smaller high tiers and making it more and more available to tiers as you go along, the lower level tiers as they go along, so that they can continue to stress test their systems, right? So I would love to pay them to stress test using this podcast. And in order to do that, we need you at mixedmedia.locals.com. Link in the description. The link is also to the right of the screen there. I think we're pretty much ready to jump into it. Did I miss anything?
How was your week?
Oh, yeah. It's a pretty crazy week. Crazy busy. There's a lot of first things happening with my business, which is actually good things. Those are not the bad parts, but dealing with a lot of stuff at once. So yeah, it's really vague, but I don't really want to get into it. How was your week?
It's all right, and sorry by the way if you can hear the lawnmower in the background. I'll try to mute myself whenever I'm not talking. But today starts the Godot Game Jam, which I'm taking part of, so that's nice. I've been hyped for it for a while, and then the theme came out. And I was like, "Wow, this is garbage." But not, I don't think it not objectively garbage. I just didn't like it personally. So
What's the theme?
it's inside the machine. That's what it is.
Interesting.
Yeah, usually they're more. I feel like usually they're more vague. Like I don't know, like or
I mean, you could interpret that, right, as like inside like the
anything.
mafia machine.
Yeah,
You know?
I wrote down a bunch of ideas. I wrote down inside the corporate machine as one of them.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that's interesting. When is it due?
9 days.
Cool, cool. I just I just wrapped earlier today the sound production on the web series I'm working on, which sound is so hard. Like all of you guys who do sound out there, like you guys are the bomb. I did a proper professional, well, one man production process, and I was shocked at how much I underestimated the undertaking for this 11-minute episode it was. So that is to say, shout out to you production people out there, and good luck to you, Nathan, for your sound design needs.
Oh, I mean, yeah. I'll
Yeah,
probably use some very simplistic noises, just
yeah,
for the sake of time.
yeah, for sure. Yeah. Um. Also, it's almost your birthday. 5 days until your birthday.
Yes, true.
So happy birthday, because people on the stream were not going to be able to see
We'll
you
see.
before
We'll
your
see you right
birthday.
after. You know.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, exactly.
days later.
All right, so I'm going to start with the short film of the week. So what we're going to do is we're going to rotate the way that we do this new format. We're going to rotate who's doing the reviewing, who's doing the interviewing, who's doing the reacting to the hot takes, and who's doing the topical subject. We're going to rotate that every week. So this week, I'm reviewing a short film that I found on r/shortfilms. That's r/shortfilms on Reddit. I love going on there, and I watch a good amount of them, and pick out one that I think has a nice balance of both being, seriously made, like the person isn't like just memeing around and made a thing. Like this person's trying to do something for themselves, and trying to craft something. A nice mix of that and things to learn, whether that's from the good that was done, maybe the not so good things that were done. But you can learn from both of those things. I think a lot of people emphasize too much learning from the bad stuff, right? Which is also helpful, but it's not just the bad stuff you can learn. You can learn from. You can also learn from the good stuff. So I'm excited today to talk about this film. It's called Initiation. And it's about 11 minutes. I don't believe, if you are in the audience by happenstance, please let us know in the chat if you are currently on, director of this short. But I don't believe he is with us today. So I'm going to be just sort of breaking it down. I'll give you a quick overview of the story. It's actually pretty simple, so I won't have to spend 30 minutes explaining it. But in the future, if you want your stuff reviewed and you want to ask us directly, you just have to join our Discord and give us permission to show your film, and then we can even show your film if it's not too long, and break it down that way. So let me pull up the film. There we go. Here we are. Oh, audio started playing. It started playing automatically. Okay, there we go. So, yeah, this film's called Initiation. Let me find some example frame here. This nice watch frame right here. And this film is called Initiation, and it's 11 minutes long, and it's definitely a very moody film. It's if you remember the film Bum Promises, there are actually a few similarities, and I've kind of been noticing a few trends in the short film space. I'm not sure what causes those trends. I really couldn't guess at it. Usually I can sort of get an intuition at like where these trends come from, but in this case, like it's like, you know, dark and like moody atmosphere. I really don't know if where this trend is coming from, but I am not mad at it because this is a good film. First of all, I want to say this film is very competently made. So, you know, hats off to you for actually having an idea, writing it down, and executing it, because that alone is very difficult to do. So, hats off to you for even producing such a competent work. Okay, so Initiation is about our main character who has essentially a friend who is a mule of some sort. We're not really told of what. So a mule being someone who traffics something. It's usually drugs, right? Drugs or maybe arms or, I don't know, something or another. So this person is a mule illegally. And they tell their friend that their mother is dying of cancer and they can't pay for the treatment. And this person offers them a job as a fellow mule. It ends with a twist that I'm not going to kill for you. No pun intended. That didn't ruin it. Just so you know, that did not ruin it. But it ends with a twist, and I'm not going to ruin that. If you want to see the film here, I'm going to put the link to it in the chat right now. You can even watch it while I'm talking. Give me 1 second. I actually really want to make sure I get this in. Link. Okay, so there we go. There we are. So both people on YouTube and Twitch should have gotten that link. That's a link to the short film. Okay, so that's the overall story. Really that simple. And honestly, you know, that's where I'm going to start, is the writing. Because I always like starting with the writing because that's the core of everything. I think it's underappreciated. I think it's especially underappreciated in short films because a lot of people tend to focus on a feeling or a mood or something very small to like expand upon with their short films, which is not a bad thing, but I really do think people could spend a lot more time not just thinking about how they're going to make something that's professional or something that's visually pleasing or visually creative or auditorially, whatever the word is, creative, but also just like really spend a lot of time with your pen, right? Your pen game. I think that's worth looking at. So here, I'll break it down from that perspective. So right now I'm going to play a little bit of the opening so you can just get an idea of the mood. I'm not gonna, actually I'll play it with the audio on, just so you can get an idea of the mood of this whole thing, because the opening seed sets the mood quite well. So here we go. that? There we are. So okay, yeah, that gives you the reason I played that opening scene is it like just combines all of the things that we'll be talking about in one nice thing, except for the overall story, right? So you got an idea of the moodiness of this film. You got an idea of how it hooks you into the wider story. So what I'm about to say makes a little bit more sense. Okay, so yeah, I think the opening is very strong. It's very compelling. You don't know, there's that information starvation thing that's happening where you're not sure what exactly is going on, which is what is building the intrigue, right? So you have all these interesting images. You have him waiting for something. Clearly, you have no idea. Wow, New York is being obnoxious. Sorry, there's a car prattling along in the background. But yeah,
have, like come through. So
okay, gotcha.
I can barely hear it.
Gotcha. Yeah, so so we're wondering what he's waiting for. We're wondering what he is going to be facing because he looks really nervous. So this is good opening that builds intrigue from the writing itself because you built it with this sort of information starvation component, right? You're not just inundating them with information at the start. You're building tension, which I talk about in many episodes. So you can go all around mixed media and find me talking about tension almost everywhere. So that is good. I found this opening to be very reminiscent of Breaking Bad, kind of like Bum Promises as well, which is not a bad thing. Breaking Bad is...
That's what I thought of when you were talking about the story.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. This sort of like opening where we get a look at a time that we're not sure when it will occur in the story or if we're looking at it sequentially. In Breaking Bad, often you'll start a episode with a peek into the future and you have no idea when that future happens, whether that's in the episode, which is, I think, majority of the time, the scene that you see at the beginning will happen within the context of the episode, but sometimes it won't happen in the context of the episode and it'll happen at the end of the season, right? It's a great tension builder from Breaking Bad. It's very Shakespearean. Shakespeare, of course, loves to do that not foreshadowing, that's not the right word, that dramatic irony, right? That's built from telling you what's going to happen and the drama that occurs because you're not going to know what's going to happen. You have information, right, that the characters don't know, can create a different kind of drama. This particular scene doesn't tell you when it's going to happen at all. It's not part of a series that is using that as a linguistic tool or anything like that. So you don't know if this has happened sequentially or not. In fact, you're probably going to assume that this is happening in real time in the film's timeline as you watch it, which then becomes obvious that it's not when we get to the next scene. It says 2 months earlier, and then we get the next scene here. So then it becomes obviously, that that opening scene is something that's going to happen later, right? So that creates this dramatic irony. We start to interpret the rest of the film in light of the first scene that we saw. So that's a breakdown of what's going on there for people who... I mean, a lot of times we naturally write these things out, which is great. In fact, I actually think if more writers, even in Hollywood, just wrote naturally, they'd probably make better stories overall instead of being like extremely robotic and fake about the stuff that they make. But even if you wrote this naturally, right, it has a structure to it that is already clearly intended to create drama and tension, right? So that's a good thing. Okay, so here's what's next. So give me a second. I cannot see because the light's not on. Okay. So the next thing we get is this sort of transition to this time period where we start to get some exposition. So we move along to this dialogue scene where we have our main character on the left of the screen there, left of the frame there, and we have his friend on the right of the frame there. His friend is the one who's the drug dealer, and the left guy is the guy we saw in the opening scene. And in this conversation, we get a lot of exposition hidden behind dialogue, which is not bad, right? Like, exposition is necessary in every film. I actually don't even like the way people think about exposition as like evil. Like, okay, let me give you an example. Watch Tarantino and ask yourself whether exposition is truly evil or if exposition is just often misexecuted, right? Whether it's just not done well. Because Tarantino will just jabber. His character is literally the most entertaining things in his movie. My favorite part about his films is the banter. Is just the jabber of characters back and forth is exactly what makes it awesome. And in that banter is packed a lot of exposition, right? But it naturally arises from the dialogue. That's where I think that people get annoyed with exposition, when it feels like a character is talking to you, the audience, when that doesn't fit the scene for them to be talking to you, the audience, right? Or it feels like there's like an audience character, right, who doesn't know anything and has to ask questions as if you have to ask questions so you can know things. That's usually bad exposition because it ruins your immersion, right? It ruins your immersion, or it just feels corny, forced, or anything like that. In this scene, we have a little bit of that, which is kind of after the really strong, visually oriented, information starvation opening, to essentially receive an exposition dump right afterwards, kind of changed the pace and tone like in a very strange way, especially because this conversation is pretty long. Actually, let me see how long it is. So this is at 3:44, and this conversation will go on until 7:55, right? So that's like 4 minutes of conversation, which is actually pretty long, right? That's pretty long. So if I'm getting that dialogue, I'm going to want a lot of juice. Like, I don't want exposition. Like, I don't want audience talk. I want to really get to know the world that we've just entered in that first scene, right? I want a lot of dramatic irony being leveraged, right? I want the information that I know what's going to happen in 2 months to be fueling my attention to the scene, because I want to know how we get there. I want to know where we're going. I want to know what made that scene, and maybe start to think about what this all might end up like, right? Because the tone is very clearly, it's not going to end well, right, from the beginning. Yeah, so to give you more concrete advice about that, I think that your scene could just be cut down. Like, there's a lot of exposition that we just don't need because we could presume it, right? So, like, he says, like, the characters are talking about, like, a little bit too much detail about, like, crime. It's like everyone knows what a mule is, more or less. I mean, you can pretty much just presume that your audience knows what a mule is. At least, especially in the context, right? People can figure that out pretty easily, what the heck they're talking about, contraband, right? And that's not even an important detail, really, as the story progresses. It doesn't really matter what they're doing, right? Because it's more about the idea of becoming a criminal for the sake of something else, right? For that idea, you don't need to know the precise details of, what do you do? How do you make money? Like, they don't talk about those details, but he asks those questions. And I don't even know this character. So it would be one thing if this character was inquisitive and you had the time to build him out, but I don't even know him. So it doesn't really achieve anything for the story for them to have conversation about something that is not thematically connected to the rest of the story and does not actually leverage the dramatic irony that you created in the first scene. Yes. Okay. So, and one comment I had about that was that I think that dialogue scene, as written, probably was okay in the writing, but I think for me, what it became obvious needs to be cut in the edit, especially, right? So I know a lot of indie people are afraid to have, a very sharp razor in the cutting room, right? You spent the time writing it, you spent the time filming it. It's hard to detach yourself enough to be able to actually cut something, right? But editing is your third chance to tell the story, right? You have the writing is your first chance to tell the story. The production is the second chance you tell a story. And the third chance you have is in the edit, right? you can change your story again in the edit. And so don't shun that as a tool that's available to you, right? If you review your film and you say this scene is a little bit too long in the pace and maybe there's some dialogue that wasn't needed, I feel like I could have cut this in a way the scene would have made 100% sense, but still cut out a lot of the dialogue and kept a lot of the good drama that was in there. So that's what I'll say about that scene. It sounds like I'm ragging on this film, where I actually enjoyed it. I mean, that's one of the reasons I picked it, is that I think that it's worth looking at. Okay, so
what was it specifically that you liked?
I liked much more of the visual creativeness and all the other, the creativity of the production is what I liked the most. Writing is probably the place where I thought it didn't have as much to offer, but I'm nitpicking this scene where this is the only scene where that's a problem for me. So, yeah. Okay. So overall, like I said, the theme of this short is not so specific, right? It's just about this moral dilemma. It's kind of the Breaking Bad problem of like, I have to pay for my cancer treatment, so is it okay for me to like, whatever. Breaking Bad, though, I have to do an episode on Breaking Bad. It's so important. I think Breaking Bad is rightfully so influential on a lot of filmmaking, and it's much more than just the style and the production. It's 100% the writing. The writing is immaculate in Breaking Bad, and so I'll have to break that down in the future. But what Breaking Bad does is it moralizes everything, right? You can pretty much get the moralization of Breaking Bad within the first season, right? You can get what the director is trying to tell you about this story within the first season, and everything after that is kind of an exploration of that theme. And that theme is essentially about consequence, right? The consequences for your actions, right? And the director, the writers, Vince Gilligan, he's really trying to drill down on what everything bad that you do has a consequence, right? So yeah, that's Breaking Bad. But here I felt like the idea wasn't as pinned down, right? I didn't get like a moralizing sentiment, and I got the feeling that you're focusing on a mood, which is perfectly fine, especially in a short film. There's a lot of practicing, right, that comes with a short film. A short film is very akin to like, I don't know, like making a smaller piece if you're making classical music, or like if let's say you're a rapper, it's kind of like making a freestyle, like not like a freestyle, but you know what I mean, like you're just kind of rapping over a track, you know, without any particular direction. You're just kind of practicing essentially, or making a mixtape or something like that, right? The short films kind of have that exploratory learning aspect to it that I think is important to acknowledge. You know, you need to learn, and so exploring ideas in your film is very good. I still think, though, that it feels less like you were going for mood 100%, like all I needed to care about was the mood, but you also asked me to care about these particulars of the story and this vague theme around Breaking Bad, right? Literally Breaking Bad, right? And I think I would have just gotten rid of that if I was going for the mood, right? I would have just explored the mood of this world instead of adding any dimension of like, you know, what drives a man to be here, or like, you know, what is okay, what's not okay, decisions like this. Like, it just felt too centered around the decision instead of just a slice of this person's life or a mood, right? Which I think would have been more compelling. Okay. Right. So, yeah. And I think if you wanted to go the moralizing route, I think I would have to know the characters better. That might increase your runtime, right? So that's a trade-off you have to deal with, because you have a budget, you have a length that you can finance and actually do, which is perfectly fine. This is 11 minutes, so it's not the longest time to develop characters, but I think you had enough space in your film to do so. And even the scene here, the talking scene, I would have just, you know, chopped this in half, and spent the rest of the time in the same location, the same house, fleshing something out. And I don't know your characters, right? So I can't tell you what that would be. But I get the feeling you thought about these characters a little bit, more than just the actions that they're going to be taking here. So I would really try to see how can I show not tell who these people are, right? Which is probably a little bit more efficient with your audience's time, right? Okay. So there we go. Let's see. Oh, and just a side note, at the end of the scene, I really like what you did in the writing with the symbolism around the alcohol. I don't know if it was intentional, because like the alcohol becomes like a symbol of like Breaking Bad in of itself. Like he clearly had an alcohol problem before, is what we learned from like the exposition. And so then at the end he says, "Give me a shot." I thought that was nice, clever a line that wasn't like too campy, right? Like this thing is not supposed to be campy, clearly, but it was a nice turn of, it wasn't a turn of phrase, right? It was a turn of the situation, right? Which tends to feel less immersion breaking, right? Less campy, which I thought was really nice. I don't know if it was intentional, but that alcohol pour coincides, him asking for a shot coincides with the rain here. And if that is intentional symbolism with like drenching, like the water, like not just a shot, but like, you know, that this turns into a downpour. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but that is what came across to me. And I think that if that was intentional, that's extremely good, genius writing. You know, that is A++. If it wasn't intentional, then it happened anyway. And you should take that awesome coincidence and run with it for sure. But I really liked that transition and symbolism. Okay, now at the end with the plot twist is my final story note. I'm not sure that I cared, which sounds a little harsh, right? But it comes from the fact that I don't know the characters, so the twist didn't have a punch other than, oh, this is what happens at the end. So I think the biggest problem with this, I think if I were to take one problem and expand it across the writing of this entire film, I would say you didn't leverage the dramatic irony that you created in the first scene. You didn't use that to create tension, right? So throughout the rest of it. So you had tension in that first scene. It was a great hook. It created a lot of interest, right? But that dramatic irony didn't persist to weigh down on me as I watched the rest of the film, right? It didn't seem to matter that we were headed in that I knew that we were headed in that direction. It's a little hard to write that way, so I understand that. I don't actually tend to do that very often. No, I don't think I have any script that I'm currently writing that I do the opening is like a peek into the future. And it's very difficult to write, I think, in a Shakespearean way. But I think watch a Breaking Bad episode that does it, and you'll see what I mean by the opening adds tension, even though you know what's going to happen. It ironically adds tension instead of being spoiler, you know. Okay, so that's the writing. Again, it sounds like I'm bagging on it. I really am not. I think that those points are the stuff that are interesting to learn, right? Because otherwise, I think if you showed this to an audience, everyone is on the edge of their seat. I hope you get a chance to show this to an audience. An awesome feeling, by the way. Submit it to festivals. You'll definitely make it into many festivals. So submit it to festivals, and I think audiences will be absolutely glued to the screen. I'm just talking about maximizing your potential with this story, right? Man needing to fund cancer and does something bad is kind of, you know, a common thing. So I think you could have added some interesting complexity by being a little bit more thoughtful with your writing, right? So again, I'm not trying to bag on your writing at all. Now, for the rest of the stuff is pretty much just all good. Maybe like one or two like random technical notes, but like the rest of the stuff is just, I think, is amazing work. First of all, your sense of visuals are awesome. Like look at this shot. That's composed so well. You use negative space so well to create isolation, right? I immediately feel stark myself, right? I immediately feel alone myself when I watch this, right? The light falls over this area very well. I have no idea whether you put that light there. I don't imagine you did. So I don't know how you're achieving this look with the camera that you're using and whatnot. I don't know how you're doing this. I don't know if this is an A7S III or something like that, and you're able to, or the light levels just happen to be right. But, bro, it works. So whatever you did, it definitely works. And then we get a lot of good editing throughout here, which is very disciplined. Every shot seems to have a purpose. The length of the shots have a purpose. It's not just dragged out for the sake of, I don't know, being moody, right? We're dragging out this moment, looking at our different shots to get a feel for the kind of situation we're in and to create that tension. And I really loved that. I love seeing in indie films more motion, right? Like not too long ago, it was really hard to move a camera for cheap. But right now, I mean, here, let me grab it real quick. We've got these awesome devices, right? This is a gimbal. These awesome devices allow us to move the camera in ways that we have never moved before. I think you're using a gimbal in some of these shots. I'm not sure if in other shots you're using dollies and things like that, but I got the feeling that all the motion is done via gimbal. And I gotta say, again, you were very restrained with your camera usage of the gimbal and the edit, and on set you didn't just gimbal everything, which is a poor decision by people who buy these things and feel empowered and think that they should just roam the camera around the entire scene. And then when they go edit, they think this is the highest effort shot, so I'm just going to use that shot only, right?
Is that the thing that makes it like stable, or is that something else?
Yeah, it's like a motorized stability device, basically. It's collapsed right now, so you can't really tell how it functions in its current configuration. But yeah, it helps with stabilization. There's a bit of like floating head syndrome in like the next scene, which happens with gimbals, but it's so minute that I feel like I wasn't even going to mention it originally until I started about gimbals. But yeah, I think you know what I'm talking about. That like sort of like it feels like you're a ghost, and it doesn't feel purposeful. But anyway,
little floaty.
Yeah. The gimbal, if you move too much up and down in a gimbal, it kind of feels like you're like detached in a weird way, like in a jarring way. But it was very slight, and I only noticed it because I watched it twice, and the second time was to find little things to nitpick, and I wasn't even going to mention it. So, whoops. Okay, so I love the camera work. I love this. This is something that also happened in Bum Promises that I've been noticing all around these indie films, is this voyeuristic camera, this camera that sort of just moves without motivation, very David Fincher, like I said, with Bum Promises. So here you get it. I'm going to mute it, just show you visually speaking. Here you get this camera. It's not tracking anything, right? It's just moving without motivation into the next frame. It almost feels like you're on a stage, right? Like the world is your stage, and the camera is just moving you to the next point of interest, right? It's almost as if you can't even resist the camera moving, right? Like you have no choice but to move where the camera's moving. Whereas when you motivate the camera, it feels more like, yes, I do want to follow the action into this next framing, right? This feels like, oh no, where are we going? Which is a good device for tension, and I think it leads from a good composition to composition. I thought it was nicely creative. This scene is very beautiful lighting. Oh, I want to say also, this car lighting is epic. Like, dude, like, I don't know if that dirt is natural, that dust up into the lights is natural to the scene, but I loved it. Like, and I love the color contrast between the blue and the orange, the blue of the car. It just made the car feel separate, right? Like it's coming from like the blue and the orange is him and the blue is something else coming to be ominous, right? Like it added a good contrast. That might be somewhat accidental as well, right? You might have just had a car with blue tinted light, more blue tinted lights, and this might have been orange. But again, take it. It's awesome. Yes. So that is all I have to say about it visually. Very competently made. I think, unfortunately, because it's a very dark film, YouTube goes to town with it. It's always sad when I see compression just absolutely ruin someone's visual image, but I can imagine what it looks like outside of YouTube just from looking at it, and I think it probably looks very good. So good job there. The other thing visually I want to say is color, right? So you have a very limited and restrained palette, which adds to the moodiness. Unlike Bum Promises, right, you went with a more even contrast, or maybe even on the upper end of contrast, very black, inky, whereas Bum Promises is a little bit more flat. I think this works very well for your mood. Everything is kind of muted and down. There's not really whites anywhere to be seen. So like even this window in the background in the shot is not white. It's like this, you know, I'm not sure if you covered this window or whatever you did to it to diffuse it so it didn't clip, right? But whatever you did, it works very well. I'm not sure if you thought about the color beforehand, before you started shooting, but it's always a good idea for anyone out there. Think about your color grading that you're going to do while you're shooting so that you can assist your color grade, right? So if you know that you want muted highlights, try not to get crazy highlights in your actual shooting, so that in the color grade, it's much easier to achieve the look that you're trying to get. In this scene too, we have a very like monochromatic, like, it's not fully monochromatic, you know, that you left some other colors in there, but it's very yellow, very reminiscent of Arrival. I can't remember the cinematographer and director for Arrival, which you can shoot me for that. Also, hot take, I don't really like Arrival that much, which is a super hot take, but you can watch my review, 60-second review of Arrival, where I egg people on in about their opinion on Arrival. But actually, I really like this very like beige tone, fits everything right. I love the blue and orange, that teal and orange, that classic film contrast. Teal and orange is a very go-to look, but a lot of people make it their own, and I felt like you made it your own. Like, look, even here on the dashboard, you got teal and orange going on here, you know, with the light from outside versus a different light that's giving you a teal, and you've got teal and orange with like right here, you see like this reflection is orange, but the rest is teal, and your color grade definitely sought to really solidify that color palette, and I really enjoyed that. Very noir looking as well. Right, so that is all good. Hold on, give me a second.
Did something happen to the video?
Yeah, someone called me, so I got kicked out. Oh, here we go. Okay, there we go. So, yeah, look at this. Look at this shot. This is nice. This is beautiful. This is good lighting. This is definitely not natural.
Way, no one on audio only is understanding.
What? Oh yeah, no one. Yeah, sorry guys, on audio only. If you're on audio only, this might be the kind of episode you want to watch on YouTube or anything like that. I think you can still learn about pretty much anything that's not the cinematography, but the cinematography is kind of a rip. Ironically, I follow a cinematography podcast. I'm forgetting the name right now. I love it. He breaks it down. Just audio only. He only recently made a YouTube channel after 6 years of doing a podcast about cinematography. And he somehow is still very informative just listening to him about the cinematography that he does. He posts stills on his website that you could follow along with, but I was listening to him while I was driving my car and I was imagining what he was saying, and it was actually pretty effective. So yeah, you can imagine what I'm saying when I say teal and orange and contrasting and all that kind of stuff. My only nitpick with the color is because you are trying to achieve that no white look, right? There's never any white anywhere, which gives it a very moody feeling, right? It is very unsettling to never see white in any shot. You know, there's never any pure white. There's never any sun white or anything like. There's no hot spots that create white or anything like that. It's very unnatural, right? Which gives it a very dramatic look. My only problem is, in some spots, it looks like you forced it to be like that, even though when you captured it, it clearly clipped, right? So over here in this shot, you can see that the car light is definitely clipping, right? Which means you're overexposed, which is very understandable with a car light. It's very bright compared to everything else. The problem, though, is when you went and you color graded it, you tried to mute the white in a way that looks like a mistake. I'm not good enough at color grading to tell you how to protect your white clip and make it creatively not white in a way that looks good. So I can't even tell you how to do that. My instinct would be to protect the white, which is essentially to make sure that it stays white so that it looks a little bit more natural. But you're going for a no white look. So if you're going for that no white look, I'm not actually sure what to tell you, but there's a great YouTube channel called it's named after the guy, so it's his name. It's Wakazi, Waqazi. Great color grader, great tutorials, and I'm 100% sure there's going to be a tutorial that covers this topic of protecting your highlight that clipped, but you want to actually color it, right? And how to make that look natural. It might even mean like applying like a filmic emulator or something like that over it to like give it a fall off or something like that. I'm not educated enough to tell you how to do it, but it kind of bugged me like a lot. So like here too, you can see, I don't know if you can see what I'm saying, Nathan, but like you see how like that white spot is like, it's not actually white, it's like, like grayed out almost, or
it's like darker.
Yeah. And it's because he's trying to avoid he's trying to avoid white as part of his palette, which is fine. But again, it kind of looks messy to me. And it kind of exposes how digital your camera is, which is not a knock on your camera. It's just something you have to keep in mind. How I would have done this to avoid this problem, period. I know you probably were rushing on set. I have no idea what time you filmed this or how long you were filming by the time you got to the shot. I'm sure it was a long time. But if you had the ability to, which it kind of looks like from this scene over here, how this window is not clipping unless you just found the perfect time of day, you probably had some diffusion on you, right? I would just diffuse the car light to make it not as bright and try to get at least the edges of the light. Like, you're probably never going to have enough diffusion over it and still have the light look natural, like a car light, over it to make it look good. But I would keep stacking it until the edges of the light, like the rims of the beam, start to not clip anymore, and only the center of the beam is clipped. And I think that would immediately make it look more natural. And I know you can't bring your camera's exposure down because it's already dark. So the only way you can do that is by diffusing the actual car beam itself. I mean, like literally taping the diffusion onto the car beam, and doing it that way. Again, these are, nitpicks. I really love the visual aspects of things. Last thing, sound design. Like I said at the beginning of the episode, I don't understand you animals who are great at sound design. You guys are nuts and insane. It drove me absolutely bonkers, spending weeks on weeks, much more time than I originally allotted, and ripped me. That means my budget, my personal, time budget went straight out the window, which is bad if you're running a business. But, I can appreciate really good sound design, especially from indie people, so much freaking better. This sound design you heard it in the first scene, sound design is beautiful in this film. Like, it has character, it's got texture, you built the world definitely from scratch. I think it's a little too loud, but that might be because you're uploading it to YouTube, and I have no idea what the heck YouTube does to your sound. But it sounded a little bit too hot. In fact, when I was looking at it in the editor, there were certain points that were like peaking, like true peaking. Don't worry about that. It was a little bit jarring, or not jarring. Like, the overall mix was just too loud. But on the internet, it auto adjusts a lot of things, and it's pretty annoying. So I don't think you have a choice. YouTube just does that. So sound design is freaking stellar. And I loved it. A lot of indie films use very ambient music because you can't, either you found the music online or you found a composer, but that composer, it's a lot more efficient to make ambient music than have like a full orchestral soundtrack. Rip Ben, unfortunately. That's an unfortunate thing, but the good news is in this film, you really made the best of it. I don't know how you got your music, if it was from Artlist or something like that, or you actually had a composer compose like this very ambient droning soundtrack. I really love your overlay of diegetic music to contrast it. Very Breaking Bad again. But instead of like Breaking Bad, where it'll just switch to the diegetic music, which is its own style, gives it sort of like a little bit of campiness on purpose added to Breaking Bad, with that sort of like diegetic music just becoming the soundtrack. Very Tarantino-esque almost. Tarantino loves to do that. But in this one, you just let the ambient music rock while the diegetic music was also playing, which gave me two musics at once. But it sounded purposeful because, like, I got a song called, I think, like Death's Wish or something like that is announced on the radio, which I thought was great. And then it plays, and then there's also this droning, and it's like a almost like a country like folk song, and then like you have like these ambient droning happening underneath, which like I thought was a very creative contrast. It really sold more of the moodiness, right? It really gave me a lot more of that moody vibe instead of quieting out the droning and then bringing in the diegetic music to take over, which would have had a different style, right? That would have been more like Breaking Bad or Tarantino or something like that. So yeah, that's overall my thoughts. I really liked it. Check it out. The link is in the stream chat. If you're watching this afterwards, the link will be in the description. And I really ask that you go watch the actual film. Tell them that we sent you at Mixed Media and to check out this breakdown. And if they want to be on the show and talk about how they made this thing, we also do interviews. So if you think that they would love to do that, tell them that we sent you. And that is my spiel. So great work.
Nice.
Okay. Looks like Ben's still not here. Yeah, I see. Said anything in Discord? No. Okay. So, what we do is we, these things come out in 3 different chunks every week, right? You see them come out as finished episodes, but what we do is we film these all in one big go live. So what we're going to do is going to be a little bit weird. We're going to reintroduce the podcast, and then we'll jump back into it. Go ahead.
Why don't we just record it once, reintroducing, and we just, on the, not live version, we can just add that beginning part every single time instead of having to reintroduce it live?
I don't know, because it's like I'm not sure whether people consume it. Like, I'm not sure if there are music people who just listen to the music stuff. There are gaming people who only would listen to the gaming stuff and so forth. Or if there are mostly people who listen to everything, or like a smorgasbord of things. Because I feel like it would be annoying to hear the same intro for like 10 minutes, because our intros like can be pretty long. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I feel like I'd be annoyed if I was listening to more than one. But if I was listening to only one kind of episode every week, then I guess it wouldn't annoy me. I'm not sure. Tell us in the chat, the comments and everything, what you think about our introductions and all that kind of stuff, our format and everything like that. Right. So, welcome back to Mixed Media. We are back for some gaming stuff. We're still waiting for Ben, but I believe Ben will be back. But we've got this awesome, interesting topic that I did not know anything about until I literally looked it up. I hope my example of Warzone is accurate. And it's gaming as a service, which I think is really interesting because it contrasts with software as a service. And Nathan will take it away.
All right. So, topic is gaming as a service, but specifically, specifically how it'll be harmful to the gaming industry in the long term. That's not to say there are no good things about it. I'll get to that. But my chief point is that in long term, no good. Probably, I think. I could be wrong. This is one of the ones where I'm less sure of. So first, let's go over what gaming as a service or games as a service is. It's also known as live service, or you can call the games that are part of that category live games. And as everything said, it's like software as a service, the same concept, except it's for games. Or technically it is a software as a service because games are software, but at least video games. Um, so essentially, the game is continuously updated in order to bring in more revenue, right? So, example is like on the screen is Warzone, where as time goes on, they might add, say, skins, for example, right? And then you can buy the skins, and so they continuously update the game. Maybe they'll, add, new content, new features, whatever it is, in order to extend the lifetime of the game. Um, and there are many ways to get revenue from this that I'll explain later. This is contrary to games as a product, which is sort of the more traditional way of doing things. This is like, I guess, the original way, since games as a service requires that you have an internet connection, right? Whereas, in the early days when people were gaming on older consoles, like, I'm talking like DS and stuff like that, they weren't connected to the internet, so games as a service wasn't even something that would be possible, right? Unless you distributed the physical game, for an update, but that didn't happen because it's just cumbersome. So, yeah, like a sort of release the game once and it's done kind of thing. That's games as a product, and that's the normal way of doing things. At least it was the normal way of doing things. Um, so some examples. Obviously, Warzone, as I said before. Sometimes games will add characters. So example would be like agents in Valorant, or you could even extend this example to cars in Rocket League. Um, some games have a subscription service, so in order to keep playing, you have to pay. So I believe World of Warcraft is a subscription service. A lot of MMOs are subscriptions like that. Some MMOs aren't
World of
like,
Warcraft is extremely old with that model. That's like maybe
yes,
one of
it's
the
it's
first
one of the
ones.
original games as a service things, which is interesting because this is like sort of the dawn of multiplayer gaming, right? And it's like, at least especially massive multiplayer gaming. Um, and they decided to go that route instead of the normal you just buy, which probably makes sense when you think about it, because you have to pay for servers continuously, right? And so if you imagine there's no precedent in servers in game pricing or anything like that, and someone said, well, we have this product, it's a video, it's what's called a video game, right? So it's brand new and it's multiplayer, and you have to keep paying for the server. You're probably going to make it so that you have to keep paying to use it, like that's like, if you just leave the video game world, right, and it's just anything that costs you money consistently to use, right? If you leave the whole software world, really, then costs you as the company, it costs you money to consistently use. Then you would probably expect that your customer pay consistently to use it, unless the costs are very minimal and stuff like that. Which servers aren't necessarily, maintenance and stuff like that. Although now we have things like Google Cloud and stuff like that, or Amazon Web Services where you're not doing the maintenance yourself. But yeah. So yeah, World of Warcraft subscription service. But yeah, games add things like new items, new cosmetics, whatever. All free to play games that intend to make money. So basically, any free to play game that's not a passion project, like not solely a passion project, is a service. And so yeah, let's get on to my point of how I think it'll be harmful in the long term for the video games industry. So first point is that people will play games for a longer amount of time without paying proportionally, right? This is sort of what I was saying before, where you would expect people to pay for using a service, right? For using something that costs money consistently for the company to create, essentially. This is not the case. So this is, it's both a pro and a con in a way, right? Because, obviously it's good for the consumer if they're getting more value for their money, right? But at the end of the day, the health of the video games industry doesn't matter what, the consumer doesn't determine that. That's determined by the companies that are part of the gaming industry, right? And so, the company has to be in good shape, right? That's not to say that, you can neglect the consumer, because then the company is not going to be in good shape, right? It's sort of a symbiotic relationship. So, obviously need to provide a good product, but not at great expenses, right? That don't make sense. So what happens when you create games that you can play for a really long time is that people have less time to play different games, right? So let's take, some people have hundreds of hours on games, some people have over 1,000, right? Now, contrast something like a movie, right? no one has 1,000 hours in a movie because that would be actually insane, or even hundreds of hours in a movie. I don't think anyone has 100 hours in a movie, in one movie specifically. You have to listen, you have to watch it like maybe 40 times, right? That's a lot of times to watch a movie.
Yeah,
Um,
no.
yeah, um, and never get bored with it. But video games are obviously different. They have a lot of replayability oftentimes, and the video games as a service only increases that, right? Because as new content comes out, now it's a new experience in some sense for you to play. It depends. Sometimes it's less of a new experience. Like if they add a cosmetic that you don't buy, that's not really a new experience for you. But if they add, let's say it's Valorant, where they add a new map, that is a new experience for you, and you might be inclined to play the game again just to experience that new level and see what it's like. Um, in that case, then the strategy of games as a service has worked in Valorant's favor. Um, but yeah, you create games where the playtime is absolutely humongous, um, and this creates a low demand for games because people are too busy playing some one game over another. Because at the end of the day, everyone's fighting for your time essentially. However many hours you allot to playing games, everyone's fighting for that time. And they try to make better games because then it may cause you to essentially increase the amount of hours you're willing to allot to something because you're like, oh, but this game is really good though. I really want to play it, right? Or I'll play it even longer, right? Um, yeah, really the goal of from a purely I'm trying to sell you something standpoint, right? The goal of a game is to just get you to play it like for a minute, at least, right? Because they get to buy it, right? So everyone's just fighting for it's crazy to think, but everyone's just fighting for at least a minute, but not everyone not everyone can even get that, So that's how at a low demand we are at currently. That it's this is sort of related to what I was talking about before with the indie apocalypse or whatever you want to call it. I said that it's not as big of a deal as I think people are saying it is, but it's certainly not the simplest thing ever to break into the gaming industry, and you can definitely get screwed by bad luck or whatever it is that caused you to have a great idea and you do everything correctly, but it just doesn't. You market correctly as I was talking about before, but it just doesn't turn out the way you want it to in terms of sales. So, what's that? Yeah, a little bit of games. This causes, devs to have a harder time, and it means that they're going to be a lot more, they're going to be playing things a lot more safe, right? We're talking like specifically well-established developers, all right? They're not going to want to lose the foothold that they have in the, because they're in a position that's hard to get into to begin with, right? They're not going to want to lose that, and they're going to tend to experiment even less, than they do already. Doing things that they know will work. For example, like when the culling came out, and battle royales were like, that was like, the culling was one of the first like major battle royales, and then some companies were like, hey, that's pretty cool, and then they realized that works, right? And so then PUBG came out, and I guess you could say PUBG experimented, right? Because battle royales weren't a humongous thing yet, I guess, right? And then Fortnite did it. I would not say Fortnite was experimenting in the same way, right? Yeah, they had building elements, but at the core of the game was they clearly hopped into something they knew would work, right? At least they didn't know if the building part would work, but they intentionally took, something that they for sure had a large audience of people who were playing, and they were like, well, let's just grab that because we know it works, and then we can put that in our pre-existing Fortnite game, and then create the battle royale game mode. And then from there you have like 1,000,000,001 other battle royale games that came out because experimentation is scary, right? Because there's a chance that the thing you think people will like, people just won't like because it's experimental, right? You've never seen someone create a game like that, or very few people create a game like that. Yeah, you end up getting just worse quality games because experimentation is what causes games to be of great quality, right? You need to find out what works, and the only way to do that is through experimentation.
Right.
And yes, I guess a sub point that's pretty related to what I just said before is that the small indie game dream, because not even indie, right? Just the small game dev dream in general. You're not talking about like two-person. I'm talking about like you can have even like be under a publisher or whatever, but you're not like EA or Activision Blizzard, right? It becomes a lot less viable. It becomes a lot more hard because there's no space to compete really, or not as much space to compete really, than there could be. Obviously, some people might not relate to this. They might be like, "Oh, but I play so many games every year." There are definitely a lot of people who play games for half an hour and just say, "Well, it wasn't my kind of game, or maybe I liked it, but I'd rather be playing something else," and they stop. Right? Those aren't they're not the problem. They're not part of the problem, right? Like, I'm not saying the consumer is the problem. I'm saying the consumer is the problem indirectly, right? The consumer who, plays a game for hundreds of hours, like me, for example, right? Like, indirectly part of the problem because we don't end up buying something else, and it's caused by games as a service. Is my point. So I guess directly caused by the company, I guess, in a way. Or is it the other way? I mean, the initial cause, right? The thing that happened first, I guess, is the company making the game as a service game, right? Then it comes that the consumer, is playing it for a long time, whatever. Second point, after games being super long, without having to pay for it being long, is that, oh wait, I forgot to say, there's one thing that actually breaks this trend, right? And that's subscription services. And that actually gives the devs money for people playing it proportional to the time that they play it, right? This solves some issues, right, of the devs having a harder time, right, because now they're making more money, but it doesn't solve the problem of devs having a hard time getting into the industry. I think it's a smaller problem than devs not having enough money based on the content they produce. So I think that's a worthy trade-off. I think it makes a lot of sense. Also, don't think it necessarily makes sense for a company to, have to cater to letting other companies exist. I'm not saying, there should be monopolies. What I'm saying is you don't have to be like, oh, I see that you're suffering because, there's a hard competitive space. Let me not make a game this year or something like that, right? I'm not saying that. Just that's more of a side thing, I guess. More of a negative side effect that I wouldn't expect companies to go for, I guess, anyways. But the second point is that the initial product is likely to be worse. So I say this because the incentive to release something that's genuinely a good game at launch is going to be less than less as a service if rather than if it was a product, right? So if you create a really bad game, you can always patch it later in the games as a service thing, right? Obviously, some games are not really able to be patched in that way because patching takes effort, and obviously, if you entrench yourself in bad code, for example, it's going to be very hard to get out of that, right? Or if you create a bad story, you can't just rewrite the story, right? You can add to the story, but I've never heard of an example where the story was just changed, in a video game. I lost my spot in my notes. Oh no. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Otherwise, yeah, you can oftentimes just patch the game later in, say, No Man's Sky, for example. So this is literally the classic example I keep bringing up because I guess it exemplifies a lot of things that are kind of bad and kind of good about the gaming industry. The game currently sits at I think it's mostly positive on Steam, the review thing, which is, I don't know what it was at the start. I assume it was overwhelmingly negative or mostly negative because of how, bad of a reception it got. But it was able to patch it itself and become better, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you say, oh, this is good or this is bad, right? On one hand, the company got no punishment for, well, I shouldn't say no punishment. It got perhaps less punishment than it should have for creating for essentially not being truthful about what was in their game at launch, right? Mm-hmm. At the same time, it allowed them to make the game better, right? But we could just avoid the whole situation. We just made the game better from the start, I don't think this roundabout way of doing things is benefiting anyone. Well, except for the companies who don't have to create something good at the start, I guess, which is not good for the video games industry as a whole. That's what my point is. Do you think? So yeah, it's a lot better for your profits if you can spend less time on your game initially. So it doesn't have to be fully polished. It could be something, good enough essentially, and then you can make it better as time goes on. I think there are cases where this works, and essentially where I wouldn't find this a bad thing, and that's in cases where the game isn't bad at start. take a game like RimWorld, for example. RimWorld is a game that still receives updates, and the game is not old. I mean, you know, it's not young, it's not new. It's not Minecraft old, but it's not like it came out yesterday, somewhere
Yeah.
in between. Um, and it still receives updates, perhaps longer than your average game, I guess, for receiving updates. And clearly, it's a games as a service thing, right? Um, but I would say the game was just good from the start, right? And this is one of the good things with the games as a service is that you can take in community feedback and be like, okay, like people want this added to the game. I didn't think about this myself. All right, I'll add it to the game. I think it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
That's the good side. The bad side is when you get stuff like, I'm just going to tell my consumer something about the game that's not true. They'll be upset, but that's okay because I can just add the thing later. We can say, oh, well, we expected it to happen, but the deadline just came up. Even if knew full well it wasn't going to happen, the deadline
Yeah.
just came up. We'll get it to you soon. you know, um, that's kind of it's part of like cyberpunk syndrome, right? When cyberpunk came out, people were still, it was like, it was a disaster in terms of the PR, right? It was, everyone knew it was not in a good state, but people were still like, I still hear people saying, well, should I buy it because I know it'll get better. It'll just get better, they'll patch the bugs and stuff like that. I'm like, really? I mean, really? You're just gonna get like, I don't know. It's something
Yeah.
so like that really bothers me about that, right? That you can just create some absolute garbage, right? You can put on a poor representation of what the game is in a trailer, because I mean, they just avoided everything negative about the game. It's not even like avoiding bugs in your trailer is understandable. If your entire game is a bug, though, I mean, come on, you just can't release it. That's just it, right? Um, or at least say, hey, we're running up our deadline. This game is, not quite there yet. So if you buy it, just understand. You don't have to say how bad it is. Just to say, buy your own risk. Maybe wait for some reviews or something like that. Whatever you want to do to skirt around the problem. Um, I mean, I'd rather you just not skirt around the problem. But if you want to go that route, right, it's just better if you skirt around the problem.
Yeah.
But they don't have to. They can just make a bad game because people will just buy it anyways. It doesn't matter. They'll be like, oh yeah, games as a service, games get better.
Yeah.
And maybe the game did get better. But was the company really deserving of that kind of money for that? For essentially, you know, lying to you? Are you gonna really like? I don't know. It just bothers me so much.
Yeah,
Meanwhile,
no.
truthful devs with good games get $0
What was the
because
game that you were just mentioning? I didn't hear it. Or yeah,
Cyberpunk.
Cyberpunk. Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
thinking that the same thing is practically true about like, I mean, I haven't followed the dev process in a while now, but I mean the dev process is like, I don't know, maybe nearing on. Is it nearing on like, I don't know, a decade? I have no idea. But Star Citizen, like,
Oh yeah. I don't know
eh,
how old that is, but it's definitely been like it's been years. Definitely, it's
it's
been
been
many
a
years.
long time. Yeah. And they kind of have a similar, not similar, but they have a problem too with like, I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, I still know some people play Star Citizen, but it's still an unfinished game entirely. But they kind of lied to people in, how long it would take them to make it, even though they already paid into it, right? And there's a lot of scandals that happened post that. And maybe it just takes someone doing games as a service, like, well, right? Like, more like, I mean, World of Warcraft is probably a good example, right? Of games as a service, like, where it's a trustworthy provider. Um, they're I mean I'm not plugged into the community, so I don't really know how well their releases go, but I assume they go okay enough for they to keep doing this for this long.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I'm not. I'm also not like I'm not in. Yeah, I'm not I'm not into the World of Warcraft community, but I have, I do know of some people, some uh, public figures, I guess, who play World of Warcraft, and it seems that at least like maybe with the recent releases specifically, because I've only seen recent stuff, that things seem to be going well. And occasionally it's like I don't really like this thing, but in general, it seems like it's just good, at least for
Yeah.
that audience.
I wonder why there's not better like companies that are just good at it. Like more companies that are just good at games as a service like that. Like that
Because
just
no one wants to pay a subscription. World of Warcraft gets the pass because it did it early, but
yeah.
people want their free games, and then they'll cry when they get the loot box. They're like, "Oh, I just want a free game with
People are
fairness." And it's
still
like,
talking
well,
about
you have to pay
Battlefield.
the price somehow, right? Like,
Yeah. People are still talking about how Battlefield has no has no single player.
wait, didn't they release a single player thing? Didn't they add it?
Wait, what? Did
Because
they
yeah,
actually?
wait, let me look this up. Battlefield. There's a trailer. I don't think I took this into the trailer, but Battlefield 2042 campaign. Let's see. Oh, this thing came out August. Or maybe it doesn't. Okay, what is the thing that, is it a new game? Wait, what? I don't know, dude. I thought I saw a story. I saw a story, like a trailer that looked like it was from like a story, right? Battlefield 2042. I don't know what it was called. Like, let's see.
Yeah. I haven't seen anything about single player or anything like that.
But it wasn't a gameplay trailer or anything. It just looked like a straight story. Like clearly there's some lore. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
Like Battlefield trailer.
Maybe they'll do what like Warzone does, and like I mean the Warzone route is actually pretty cool. I like the evolving Warzone story that's not tied to any campaign, right? Like it's just every season of Warzone there's like a new little cutscene that sort of progresses how Warzone changes, and that's not even the most interesting part, right? Like they build the lore throughout the entire system, like in the menus, and like you get a new character, you get a little animation, like the world of Warzone is kind of well understood, even though I haven't read a single thing about the world of Warzone. You know what I mean? So, I mean, you can do that without having a literal single player. It would be smart for them to do it that way, I think.
Yeah, this is not a campaign. It says a short film. That's what it is.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
just thought it was a trailer. I was like, oh well, obviously, well, this looks like a story to me. It was I
Yeah.
didn't know it was self-contained. I thought it was like part of something bigger. But
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yeah.
okay, well, yeah, no
But people are
campaign.
still people are still hangry. Like they're just like absolutely enraged still. I'm sure it's a minority of like weird people who are still like on this train, but I mean, it costs money to make single player. Battlefield doesn't make good single players. Therefore, hopefully, this efficiency is keeping your game not as expensive while still having good multiplayer. So I'm kind
Yeah,
of down for it. I'm kind of pro this. Unless it's a bad company game, then you need to have single player because bad company single players are actually decent. So actually, I don't think I
but
can't even say that. Bad Company 1 was kind of eh. Bad Company 2 single player is actually decent. So
let's see. It took the best Battlefield to make it decent.
right, exactly. It's still
Uh,
not even mind blowing, just okay enough.
for the record, Star Citizen was announced in 2012. Got $2 million
Oh,
dollars
almost
in
10 years.
Kickstarter. Pre-production started in 2010. Production started in 2011. The game was originally anticipated for 2014, but was delayed. And then it was released to pre-purchasers and you can't be serious. To pre-purchasers into their pre-purchasers in 2015, and continues to receive updates. No predicted date for the commercial release of Star Citizen is currently given. You could pre-purchase this game 6 years ago, and the game still has not been released.
Okay, so the thing is, like, right, if they were transparent from the beginning, right, they're using CryEngine, they're doing super high detailed
Oh, they're not
work.
anymore, by the way.
Oh,
They're using
really?
Amazon Lumberyard apparently. Yeah,
They
so they're like,
switched engines?
well, because it's a fork of Crisis. So like,
No,
or
but I'm
not
saying,
Crisis,
why
sorry,
would you
Prime.
switch? I mean, that sounds like work anyway, right? Like, why, like,
Maybe
more work to
Lumberyard was
do?
giving them like
Or
wait a
maybe it was
minute.
really easy to port or something. Like, it was just,
I assume because if it's the same thing, maybe it's like yeah, maybe it's like very similar enough where you can just you can just port it and it's like it
yeah.
works.
Okay,
Although
well,
this article is I guess a bit it's not called Amazon Lumberyard anymore. It's called like Open whatever. So I guess it's a bit outdated, but yeah.
It's a dumb name.
Yeah. Also, they received. You want to take a guess at how much money they received? Not through purchasing, like pre-purchases, but through, it says, crowdfunding
Oh no.
and external investments. Do you want to guess? This is people who are doing this
I
not
don't
because they
even.
received anything, by the way. Well, maybe crowdfunding you receive like, some special
Some
thing when you
skin.
buy the game or whatever, but
Yeah.
maybe that doesn't include pre-purchases because I guess that could be crowdfunding because it's not like you're buying the thing technically. I don't know. But how much do you think that figure would be
Dude, I have
by
zero
March
clue.
2020? What'd you say?
I have zero clue.
No, just take a
Maybe
guess, man.
take a guess. Crowdfunding and investments, maybe like
External investments.
$2 million. I don't know. Oh
Increase
no!
it by like over an order of magnitude.
Oh no! Oh
It's
no! I underestimated humanity.
63.25 million.
Wait, what is it?
63.25 million.
Oh no! What are they doing with that money? That's insane. You could make a whole like, you could make like like two like independent, not independent, but like two like normal films, or like almost the whole Marvel film, like with a few dozen million after that
I would
for
actually
that
have a
money.
completed project by that too, by the way. Like it wouldn't be like it's happening
Yeah, it
now.
would be complete.
I remember
That's
a couple years ago, maybe it was last year, maybe 2 years ago. I remember seeing something called Squadron 42, which is like some single player thing. I'm seeing
yeah,
it on the Wikipedia now. It says, "Is just like, come on, man." I remember thinking like it looked really nice, like beautiful, right? Like in terms of visually, right? The Squadron 42, a single player game set in the same universe, was initially announced in Kickstarter as an included campaign. They went to Kickstarter again for a part of their game.
so here's my point though about like Star Citizen. If they were honest since the beginning about the fact that this was going to be a decades-long project and you were in it as an investor, right? Like you were paying into something that you're investing in for decades because otherwise this type of game could never be made. Which the argument can be made that this type of game could never be made because it's just too cost prohibitive. There's no amount of investment you could get unless you really convince like a big whale like a Microsoft or something to invest in it. There's no amount of money that you can get from investment to make this game happen. The problem is the lack of transparency. Like they said, oh yeah, like pre-buy the game and the game will be out in like 2 years, right? Like, and it's been almost a decade since like since all this stuff, and fans didn't know that. And I would have much rather them say we're going to build this world piece by piece and have like a very like good plan, like a playable plan, right? Where you start with like, okay, let's just start with one planet and you can play on that planet, right? Then let's make that planet multiplayer and you can play on that planet multiplayer. Then let's make this solar system, right? But instead of doing that, they just make a big gigantic broken thing that just has continuously like non-functioning parts being added to it instead of like being able to pick it up and actually play it as intended. You know what I mean? Like, why didn't they just take a path that actually made sense to subscribe for because you were in it for the vision? You know what I mean? Instead of this being this like, oh, we're gonna like chase this trail and then chase this trail. Let's make this single player like let's make this single player and skin Kickstarter for that. Like, I feel like it could have been a convincible project, if it was done properly. And maybe that would have been a good example of gaming as a service if they had planned it to be that way instead of it being like garbage.
Yeah, I don't know. I wonder if they even care anymore. Yeah, I wonder if they care
Yeah.
to begin or just a scheme. The entire time.
But the thing is, the concept is like, I mean, they put a lot of work into the art. At least the art is like, like
Yeah, but that's the
stunning.
part that like, you know, you get someone to do it who's passionate about it, and you know, obviously it's still going to work for them, but that's the easy part. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Relatively speaking, I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm saying if for the amount of money you're getting, that's easy. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
that's true. Huh. Yeah, but I wonder if, like, overall, though, if there were more companies that were doing gaming as a service better, if that would compete well against the companies that do it poorly, or like don't do it and then do other things that are kind of unsavory, whether that would push competition in a good direction, and then we wouldn't have see like a lot of the problems that you mentioned, you know.
Gotcha.
Like, you know,
Yeah.
like people actually just do it well, like Warzone, or not Warzone, World of Warcraft, and then right now it's just World of Warcraft practically, you know. But what if there were more companies that did it well, you know?
Yeah. hmm I don't know where I was. What
Oh
was the
yeah,
last thing I was
we
talking?
went on a crazy bunny
We
trail.
digressed. I don't even know what we started with.
You were talking about
Cyberpunk.
Cyberpunk, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, in summary with Cyberpunk, uh, yeah, it's setting a precedent where, you know, the idea that you can create a game that's horrible, you can still make a lot of money by promising good updates, essentially. Or you don't have to say you can have good updates. You can just have people expect it because that's just, you know, they'll be like, oh, but you know, I don't even know if Cyberpunk ever said it was a live service game, right? For all we knew, it could have just been released and then dumped, you know? It could have been, that could have been just it, right? I
Yeah.
wonder if they ever said that, or if it was just assumed. Uh,
Yeah.
um, yeah.
Cyberpunk gaming history.
Mhm. Wow. You know, I don't think it's I believe it would be eligible for the next Video Game Awards. I don't believe it was eligible for the last one. I wonder if it'll show up. If it shows up for anything, I don't know, man. I might just well, you know, there's some things where it's like art, for example, like obviously like that's not like that wasn't the bad part, you know what I'm saying? Although some of it's questionable, but that wasn't the bad part.
I mean, there's some problems with like, I mean, if you
No
don't
ray
have a
trace. It looks
3080,
kind of weird
yeah,
sometimes.
if you don't have a 3080, then you can't even appreciate a lot of the art, which is a big flaw, you know? Like,
Yeah, it
if
makes
you
me
don't have ray
wonder.
tracing.
What do you judge the art on? Do you judge it on like its potential? Because what if you use a supercomputer, right? And you're saying I have the best graphics in the world. I mean, technically, yes, probably, right? Because you can run it on a supercomputer and it'll have like premium ray tracing, right? And you know, it'll be like true ray tracing, unlike current ray tracing with like RTX, which is like it's ray tracing but like watered down essentially. It's not
I think
like
it should be judged
as
off
physically
of
accurate, I guess.
how well it serves the work, and like also mixed in on its own. Like maybe there should be like a combined, like, you know, which makes it even more subjective and annoying.
Yeah, I
But
feel like there's no
you know,
guideline on that. It's probably just like, you know, I'd probably just say vote on like best art. That's it.
yeah,
There's no
exactly.
criteria, which is strange because, you know, what art means to some people is, you know, they're gonna think about it in a different way, you know, probably. But
Yeah,
yeah, okay. So if it shows up for like best art, I mean, I think it's weird, but I don't know. I feel like it's just a disgrace of a game that it shouldn't like even appear, you know? I
yeah,
kind of feel
but
bad for the
you
people
don't know
who
how
made
much
the
they'll
art,
pay,
right?
huh?
Huh? I
What are you
said I
saying?
kind of feel bad for the people who made the art, you know, because the rest of it wasn't necessarily their fault. But it's like I don't know, man. Like, so the like unfortunately, you're gonna have to pay for your company.
Yeah, the concept is really good. Like the aesthetic is really good. The
Mm,
execution is kind of lacking, gotta say.
mm,
Oh man,
yeah,
CD Project Red can do no wrong was the hype train.
yeah. They made The Witcher, didn't you guys know? They made three good games before, all in the same series.
Yeah,
Wait, is it three? It's three Witches, right? I think there's
yeah. There's
three.
three witches.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, yeah. Anyways, moving on. So all in all, with that point about initial products likely to be worse, I think it might be better. It might just be better to just have one shot at doing it correctly. Not necessarily one shot, but you know, because games as a product aren't strictly, you know, one thing and no updates, right? Games as a product means that they don't like the intention is not to make money off of the updates specifically. You know, so when you release the game, you know, you're gonna have bugs. That's okay, right? Can't possibly find everything. People using different hardware, whatever, is gonna cause some problems. So then you can, you know, you fix the bugs, whatever. Maybe, you know, as a feature request, whatever, and you're like, oh yeah, great idea, right? But you know, then you're done. You know, you say, all right,
Yeah,
off to the on to the next project, whatever. We're not going to add 70,000 new skins and make the game 100 gigabytes like Warzone, and then and keep trying to make you buy it, or sell skins, whatever. So yeah, on to point three. Oh well. Okay, it's very related. It can cause scummy business practices, which is literally what we were just talking about with
Yeah.
Star Citizen and stuff like that. So, well, what I wrote down in my notes was that I didn't even think about Star Citizen or like Kickstarter stuff, but I wrote down that it essentially brought gambling into games, which is a it's kind of tough because a lot of these games are marketed towards kids, or maybe not explicitly, but implicitly somehow. Um, and you know, child gambling is kind of not good. Uh,
Yeah, it's kind of like something people don't want to talk about too much.
I think that it's getting there's definitely some cover. It's definitely, well, it's illegal in some countries now, like gambling in certain, in I think some Asian countries may have a lot of legislation about gambling in video games. And did I send? I think I said this before, right? Last episode, something about Pokemon, and I think it's Korea having some law that might ban Pokemon, like a new remastered Pokemon or something like that, because
What?
something about gambling and like I don't remember, and I assume because it's marketed towards children, right?
Mm.
Essentially making a child gambling game, I guess.
I remember
Uh,
Pokemon Diamond, I believe, had it had like a casino thing in there where you could gamble. I can't remember what it was, and it
there
was
wasn't
just
real
like
money though, right? Because that wasn't connected to the internet. There was not. That
no,
wasn't
no.
paying.
So there's no real money. I was just saying. I wonder if it was. It's just like it. Like, is it so strict that even the concept of gambling in a game is like restricted? I wonder.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the details. I'm not even sure if it was I don't even know. I think it's Pokemon. I think it's Korea, but the rest of the details, not too sure about.
Mm.
But, yeah. um, yeah. Not only do kids end up seeing like gambling and stuff like that in their games, but they also see on Twitch, right? A lot of Twitch streamers who are fairly wealthy, will be like, "Oh, I have $1,000 to burn because I literally have like $1 billion. It literally doesn't make a difference to me." And this is like content people will watch or whatever, right? I think you have some kid watching
Buying
that. It's like,
buying the
ooh,
Doge, the Doge,
huh?
the Doge crypto.
Mhm.
I want to say the full name, but I can't because I don't know what'll happen on YouTube. But cryptos are heavily like keyworded on YouTube for because
I
there are a
see.
lot of scams like with crypto. But the
Oh yeah,
Doge,
yeah. Big connects.
yeah,
um, but yeah, yeah, seeing it on Twitch and stuff like that. Yeah, no good. But aside from gambling, there's also stuff like paywalls, which paywalls, okay, I guess it depends on what you define as a paywall. Let's say it can be done correctly, but okay, if you define a paywall as literally something where you need to pay to progress in the game, it can be done correctly, right? I think you can essentially a free trial. You know what I'm saying? You play the game for
yeah,
free, you reach the paywall, and you just pay for the thing, and you get more game. Right? The difference where the game just soft locks you from continuing or something like that, right? Where it's like, I mean, you could grind 100 hours to progress, or you could just buy it. It's like, all right,
World of Tanks.
you're just being untruthful. The answer is you just buy it. Like, or sometimes they'll
Yeah,
make it like, you know, technically on the edge of possibility. You know what I'm saying? Or some people will do it. But very few people will do it.
yeah,
um, Most people will just buy it. It's like, just say pay for the thing. Like, that is what you're saying. I don't know. It's kind of, or you could just say like, we're gonna have this lotto thing. You can go into the lotto. You have a one in like I don't know, 1 in 200 chance of passing the paywall for free, or you pay for it. That is the same exact thing, except except you just said it outright, right?
yeah. Pretty much. Getting
um,
past the Covenanter in World of Tanks, I'll never forget it.
yeah, yeah. And some people probably got past
Happened.
it. They're the 1 in 200, right?
Yeah.
They did it, but I'm sure a lot of people just paid for it. Especially because I think there's some trickery there too that makes you more likely to pay for it because you end up thinking it's possible, and then you sink so much time into it that you get like the sunk cost fallacy where it's like, okay,
Mm.
I spent like 10 hours trying to continue. I'm going to continue,
Yeah.
So
I
yeah,
mean, like, I remember, it was probably, I don't remember last time I played World of Tanks many, many years ago, but I remember looking up on YouTube. I was so desperate because I couldn't get past the Covenanter. I remember looking up on YouTube, Covenanter tips and tricks and whatever, and literally the tips and tricks were just try to live until the end of the match and hope your team wins, or
oh my goodness.
so that you can get the XP from winning. Or like try to take pot shots at people so you can get the try to like hit and run, but the thing is not even like it's not even good at that strategy. Like and a lot of people mention in their videos, just pay for it. Literally, or like just pay for the next year. Like that's how you get past the Covenanter. So yeah, just tell me that, World of Tanks. Just say you're pretty much done here.
I mean, that's a pretty good free trial, when you think about it. Because it probably got a good amount of hours,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, for sure.
Okay, I guess they probably would receive less because the moment people reach that trial barrier, there are going to be a lot of people just drop out. They're like, well, I don't think the game is worth that much because, well, I think people undervalue games. But, in their mind, the game is not worth that much, right?
Yeah.
Which is one of the things where it's like this is like a chain of problems. If you just bought the game, right? Like this wouldn't even be a problem if you're willing to buy the game.
Yeah.
If you're willing to pay the $15, or whatever it is. Probably more than that because it's weird. None of it makes sense because having a AAA game be $15 does not exist, right? It's either it's $0 or it's $60. There's no in between. It's very strange, but which even though the Covenanter might cost like $10, whatever it is, right? Like they still would not sell. They would not sell past the paywall if they just explicitly sold it. They would not sell it for $15 because that just the unspoken laws of video game marketing say so. It doesn't make any sense to me, but that's just how it is.
I just think it just takes there's just a cultural change, right, from like the dev side, which is very hard because video games. I feel like video games are in like the old Hollywood like stage where it's so expensive to make a video game that there are a lot of gatekeeping. There's a lot of gatekeeping happening, and because there's a lot of gatekeeping happening, people want to control. Those gatekeepers want to control every aspect about the culture and everything like that. But like, I mean, the moment you get like more democratization of making like, games is the moment that you'll find just people who are just willing to be more transparent doing better, like that's it because they just are trusted,
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's kind of sad because, developers known for being specifically programmers, well, even artists, I think, okay. Yeah, I've heard bad stories from like every department, so maybe it's just everything. In the video game industry, just known for like being a bad job essentially in terms of how much time it takes out of your life and stress and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But people do it for the passion of it, which is like that's highly respectable and also highly sad,
Yeah.
It has to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way. That's the thing, right? It's not like there's something inherently bad about video games and their cost to the cost ratio. You know what I'm saying? It's
not at all.
Entirely, this is coming from like, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. This is like, because if I end up working in the video game industry, there's the goal, right? It's like, that's gonna hurt, having to, because in theory, and I'd rather own my own company, right? And if that doesn't work out, then work for a video game development company. If I work for one, that's if it ends up being bad, I might just quit. You know what I'm saying? I don't think I have that kind of drive to like. It's like the people I'm selling it to don't appreciate it, so I'm just not going to do it. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
I'm not going to keep like catering to you essentially. And if I'm the owner of such a company, I can't do things like crunch time and stuff like that and underpaying, right? Like especially crunch time. Underpaying is like. That's also whack, but at least it's like it's like if everyone says okay, I gain enough value myself because I find this fulfilling, then it's like is it really underpaying? I don't know, but but then it just makes it harder to survive. Stuff like that. And like people okay, so I'm gonna digress a bit, but essentially large video game development studios will contract like literally companies whose job they're just contractors essentially who make art or program because they can't finish their games on time, and those companies themselves will be under crunch, like the contractors, because because essentially, right, the company is going to go to whoever asks for the least amount of money or says they can do it in the fastest time, right? So they're all competing each other to do it for the fastest time, and everyone needs it to be
whoa.
We changed the internal staff.
Nice.
But yeah, I was saying, yeah, if it goes to essentially the highest bidder in a way, right? And the highest bidder in this case is the person who's willing to put their employees through the worst treatment, essentially, right? And there are like massive companies who do that specifically for programming and for art, but I'm sure there's like stuff for like probably I think music's different because you can't brute force music the same way as you can brute force art and programming. Essentially, because like in music you tend to have one unified composer, right? Whereas in art, yeah, you have a an art director, but then you have like a billion other people doing their own things, making like building it up essentially, and they can do their own work concurrently. So it's easier to buy crunch overseas from that kind of stuff. Essentially, I say overseas because you can exploit countries where their labor laws aren't as nice, I guess. They can work longer hours for less pay, essentially. But yeah, I digressed. Anyways, back to the topic. Those are my 3 points. I think as I said before, it's not entirely bad. Like they're good examples. Like I think I mentioned RimWorld before. I would consider that a good use of games as a service. The game was good from the start. Added features that people wanted. It wasn't an excuse. It wasn't an excuse to create something bad from the start. I wonder if games as a service was even something that was planned at the start. It's a sandbox kind of game, so I think sandbox games essentially are more ripe for games as a service because adding new items and things you can place, right, is something that you can always do essentially. Whereas in a game, I don't know, say Warzone, right? It's more baked, right? You can't necessarily add a new feature like that will help breaking the game essentially. You can't just say, oh, now the player can fly, and that's not gonna work out well with the rest of the balance, right? Stuff like that. I don't know. Maybe it's like a shifting state in video games where essentially it becomes more economical in the short term to do games as a service because of the current culture of the consumers of video games. As I said before, I think it's unhealthy for the long-term state of the video game industry, but understandably, no company wants to not do that because in the short term, it's very profitable, and not doing so could end in more risk, essentially. Um, I wonder if in the future, if it continues shifting in this direction, where essentially smaller game dev studios, sort of how I was talking about the overseas crunch buying thing, smaller dev studios will essentially be contracted to create, essentially patches for live servers games, or like, essentially like maybe contracted to create like a game mode or something like that, right? Imagine if the live service updates became a lot more prominent. They were less like, oh, I added a new skin, more like I added a whole new, I don't know, whole new map or well, that's the thing. I meant an open world map. So I was talking about added a whole new, a larger thing than we currently get, right? And I wonder if, essentially there'll be companies who specialize in just being like the general programmer, the general artists, whatever it is, so that they can create for a variety of companies. Which having a generalized studio do that is going to compound on the problem of a lack of originality that I was talking about before, because they're not going to be stylized, right? Maybe they'll have their own slight styles because you can say, oh, I prefer this artist's artistic style over this one, right? And that's my company's appeal, is that I provide this artistic style, but I'm not going to deviate into something like, say, Riot Games has a very stylized style, right? Very stylized. Their artists are, if you ever go on like Instagram and you look at the artists' portfolios or whatever, right, on Instagram, they'll draw in that style like naturally, right? Like I assume they're selected based on the fact that they can do that and they're trained to do that, so that's the stuff they tend to pump out, right? If you have these generic studios doing this, you might get slightly stylized things. We're not going to get anything like that, probably. At least it's not going to be as well executed. I think Riot Games has a very great art team, great art direction. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say.
Cool. And Ben popped in at the end of that whole segment. Ben, what are your thoughts on games as a service? That's a joke.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's cool. That's very interesting. I didn't know anything about this topic, so I think that those are all interesting thoughts. Cool. Can we do like a really cool, like just really speedy reaction to these hot takes, Ben? Just like go for it. Okay. Well, let me reintroduce the podcast real quick for this last segment. So
sounds good.
Okay. So welcome back to Mixed Media. While we're filming this live, we're at 8:48 p.m. But Ben has arrived just in time from his what was it? A flute performance, or was it a practice or something like that?
Yeah, it was basically a discussion with all the flute players, and then some people performed. But one of the players came like half an hour late. He was supposed to perform, so I had to wait for him to get there. Anyway.
Okay, so he's gonna do a nice hot take round of Reddit posts that me and Nathan found. Before we get into that, though, welcome back to Mixed Media. This is a live show every week at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. You can find our link to our YouTube in the description, find our Discord where you can continue the conversation. And if you're on Rumble, we want to be on Rumble Live, so mixedmedia.locals.com. We just need one person on there in order to get live on Rumble. So now that my plugs are done, let's just go for it. Let's see. So,
all right.
Okay. This one is mine, or actually Steph found mine this week because it was a little bit bogged down, so I don't really know much about what's here. But this one came from my household. So this says John Williams and Aram, last name I'm going to absolutely butcher. Do you know how to say it, Ben, by perchance?
Yeah, well, I can't really see the thing. I pull it on my phone. It's much easier, faster to get on my phone to get into Skype. But I can just see enough to like kind of blurrily see the name. Hachatourian.
Okay, yes, that name there.
Yes.
Aram, I'll call him. Am I the only one that, while listening to Aram, thinks that Williams took quite some inspirations from it? Also, I can't help myself each time I listen to is it, how do you pronounce this? Guyane lullaby?
Okay.
I don't know.
Do you like the standard English pronunciation or the correct pronunciation?
Give me the correct one.
The correct pronunciation is Guyane.
Okay, Guyane lullaby, but think that Ray's theme has a striking resemblance to it. And then this person who responded to it has even stronger opinion, says John Williams often takes more than just inspirations. Oftentimes he just his motifs, am I reading this wrong? Oh, he just uses motifs. Sorry, it's small on my screen too, unfortunately. From other composers like Aram, Shostakovich.
He said he just lifts motifs. That's what it is.
Okay, that's what that says. Shostakovich, etc. And Ben, what's your hot take?
Okay, can you, since I can't read it, what do they say? They say the lullaby from Guyana, or just the ballet itself?
They say the lullaby.
Okay. So quickly, so there are two points there. Was Williams like Hachatourian in any sense? So Hachatourian is kind of the three big 20th century Russian composers. He's in the triumvirate there with Shostakovich and Prokofiev. Well, he's kind of the Armenian guy. Draws a lot on Armenian and Georgian folk music. And Guyana is one of my favorite pieces. Literally, fantastic ballet. But you have to listen to the original version of the ballet. It's very hard to find. The score is almost impossible to find. I copied it all 800 pages of it while I was at Hopkins. They happened to have this, rare edition. Okay.
Wow.
Forms it all. It's a fantastic work. I arranged several things and performed them myself, arranged it for other people from the ballet. Fantastic work.
Dang.
It's also cut from 2001: A Space Odyssey, the lullaby, which actually isn't in the original version of it. But anyway, that was in 2001: A Space Odyssey, and I believe it ends up getting cut from the. Is it? I don't remember. Is it in the film or is it cut from the film? I think it's in the film.
Not sure. I'm not sure what part of the film it would be in.
Yeah. So what does he share with Williams? Well, Patrick Jordan is a really colorful composer, but like in a kind of ethnic way, and colorful, but like more brass heavy than a lot of like colorful composers. So it's like really bright colors in his music and very melodic. So yeah, you could say in some ways that Williams shares that. He's maybe not quite as like intricate with his brass as Williams is. As in terms of like taking raw material, I can't come up with like the lullaby from Guyana is not like Ray's theme at all, in my opinion. I don't really know what this person is talking about. Maybe I need to re-listen to Ray's theme because it's pretty unmemorable. But you know,
That's a hot take in itself.
Yeah. Well, and I don't mean that so much because of Williams, but like, I mean, come on. Like, what is he working with? I mean, is Ray that intriguing? Yeah, for the first like 10 minutes of the first, episode 7.
Yeah, that's a whole other topic.
You know what's interesting? When Ray's theme was mentioned in the thing, I was thinking, what is Ray's theme?
Same.
And the weird thing is, I've listened to it many times because I think I like it. I'm sure I was like, I don't remember what it sounds like though, which is very strange.
It's kind of like this. It sounds, and I'm not the person. I'm taking this idea from somewhere else. Someone else said this first, but I agree with it. It sounds like it's a misplaced, like it's like a theme from a fairy somewhere in Harry Potter that like John Williams didn't use. And then he throws in like the day of Dies Irae chant in there too.
Oh,
it's just kind of like, what is it?
Interesting.
Yeah, very different though. The guy in the lullaby is like this rich cello, playing this haunting melodic line. It's very different. So I don't get that comparison at all. To the broader point though, does Williams like? I think Williams is inspired by a lot of things. You could probably like, if you're someone who's crazy like I am and listens to all of Sir Arnold Bax's symphonies, okay, who's an unknown composer. His first symphony, the main theme, it's a cyclical theme, a cyclical structured piece, so it has the same theme beginning at the end, okay, and the main theme is just Darth Vader's theme with like one extra note. So instead of being like dun 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 dun, it's dun 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 dun. Okay, so but did Williams know that? I mean, almost certainly not. I think it's more just coincidence. Are there other things that he's like intentionally, borrowing? I mean, we've talked about Williams' inspirations before. I think he's inspired by a lot. When I've seen him like rip things off, really the only thing I can think of is a lot of things in the original Star Wars because he was told he had to do that.
Ripping himself off.
No. Like in the first episode, he's basically because he had to convince Williams. I mean, I had to convince George Lucas not to just use temp music, not to use existing classical music. So his instructions were like basically take Mars from the planets, and that's the opening of Star Wars, and take the beginning of second part of Rite of Spring, and that's the desert music.
Yeah, I mean, this person even mentions Holst, which makes sense with what you just said.
Yeah. Well, Holst is like a classic example of, early 20th century big brass writing. So, of course, he has an impact on Williams. I mean, there's no way Williams has not studied every, inch of Holst's scores.
All right, next hot take. All right, hot take number 2. Let me pull it up so I can read it better. Okay, so this one's from Nathan. It says, "Do something interesting rhythmically. In my view, there are more."
It's worth noting what the original question was.
Oh yeah, go ahead and explain.
The original question was I think something along the lines of how can I make a good melody, essentially.
So this person's response to that is, do something rhythmically. In my view, there are more melodies that are supported by interesting rhythms than by interesting note choices. And it's easy to overlook. Most people think melody notes.
Yeah. So I wouldn't say like that's the only thing you can do to make your composition more interesting. But rhythm is kind of the like overlooked foundational element of music, and certainly in the world of musical analysis, nobody wants to talk about rhythm. And that's kind of I talked a lot about this with some of my mentors at Peabody, about how that's kind of like the lost frontier, and like maybe the final frontier, maybe not the final, but like the next frontier of musical like analysis and figuring out like what's actually going on in music, because that's kind of even more than melody and harmony in some ways, rhythm is like the thing that we respond to first. That we know like what a march rhythm is. Generally we know what a lullaby kind of rocking cradle rhythm is, and we respond to that instinctively without even being able to articulate that. That's so ingrained in who we are as listeners. And yeah, it's the kind of thing that like if you're just focusing on pitches, which is what most analysis tends to be, and then I think it also can work its way into the minds of composers. We ignore the effect of rhythm, but like again, even more than melody and harmony, what's going to make you respond in music? It's the rhythm, right? Because you listen to something and you want to move, right? You want to, even if you're not going to get up and dance, in public, but like there's a sense of motion in it, and that's not because of the melodic notes or the harmonic notes. That's because of what it's saying to us on like a level of, respond to this by movement. So definitely don't ignore rhythm. I think it's fascinating. Like I said, that's kind of, I think maybe, and some of my mentors have said, it's kind of the next frontier, the ignored pillar of analysis. Trying to figure out like, well, so we know what all the relationships of all the pitches are, but like, what is the rhythm telling us? We've forgotten that rhythm exists, and like I think that's really cool. When I went to Moscow and presented in Shostakovich at the Moscow Conservatory, my paper was actually on why Shostakovich is, his most frequently used rhythm is kind of a eighth note and two 16th notes, and that pattern repeated. But in his 11th and 12th symphonies, he basically doesn't use that at all and uses a dotted rhythm, dotted 8th, 16th instead. And like, what is the significance of that? I think there's a lot that can be said about rhythm. So yeah, definitely don't, if you're gonna pretend like the rhythm doesn't exist as a composer, your music will not be as interesting as if you have some understanding, even if not like a well articulated understanding of what rhythm does.
Yeah, I gotta say, in pop music, rhythm is like at the forefront right now, just in a completely different perspective. And I feel like in popular music, like the like rhythm has seeped in, being at the forefront has seeped into every single genre practically at this point. And it's a pretty obvious statement, but I think the more interesting thing is how the innovation keeps evolving, because obviously, with your radio songs, it's not going to be interesting at all what's happening with rhythms, but like the people who are pushing boundaries in terms of what people tolerate as rhythms in popular music, I think it's pretty cool. I think all of it kind of comes from hip hop one way or another, and like this most recent strain. But it happens in the vocals, it happens in the the rapping, it happens in the instrumentals, it happens like on every layer. And it's interesting seeing people play with pitch and rhythm more in tandem. I think a lot of it will sound very bad in 10 years, but some of it will end up being like, classic, I guess, like more potent.
I always thought of it like as like music in two dimensions, as one dimension being rhythm and the other dimension being pitch. And I don't know, I always found when I'm making a song, I'll start with one or the other. Sometimes I just start with the rhythm with no idea of the pitch, right? I'm like, oh, it sounds cool. Oftentimes it leads to nowhere, right? I'm just like, all right, this isn't going to work for whatever, right? But I feel like I maybe sometimes do pitch a bit more, but in general, it's pretty almost half and half what I start with.
Yeah.
I should add too, there's, I'm muted. No, I don't know why the mute symbol just came up.
I can hear you.
Yeah, okay. There's a Russian, he's kind of not really a music theorist. I don't know what you'd call him. He was a composer, but also wrote a lot about music. And so I talked about it in his paper that I gave. And interestingly enough, I kind of used him to talk about Shostakovich's music, even though Shostakovich hated him because he criticized Shostakovich's music. Anyway, but he basically kind of a really general overview of what he says in his gigantic book basically is that he's looking for like signs of the zeitgeist in music, and his conclusion is essentially that rhythm is really where the pop, the zeitgeist, the voice of the people, he would say, exists in music. And I think in some ways that's, I don't know if it's true or not, but he likes to draw examples from like different revolutions throughout history, and like, well, what kind of rhythms are being used in those revolutions, and like music in that period, why? And I don't know, it's a kind of fascinating avenue to like just start exploring, and if you can't come up with answers, that it's an interesting perspective that he thinks that rhythm kind of contains the zeitgeist. Yeah.
I think I'm not sure if you'd like it, Ben, but Nathan knows this band. There's a band called Polyphia, which I have lately been obsessed with. It's a instrumental only band by and large. They have a few songs, here and there that have vocals, but it's mostly instrumentals, and it pulls from so many different places. Almost all of it is like rhythmic inspiration, and like when I say pulls from everywhere, I mean like literally everywhere, like pulling from everything from hip hop to R&B to classic rock to metal to even classical music, I would say. There's a lot of the moment I heard one song from this band, I was like, this person is trained in some respect, and that's exactly what I learned when I looked it up, is that this person is musically trained. Who's composing this is very, very intentional with everything. But the most interesting thing is that this is mostly guitar music, right? This is mostly, guitar music, but it's like so inspired from so many different directions, and it all works together, and it's mostly rhythmically challenging and pretty much making its own genre at this point.
It's kind of math rock in general, though, right? Well, I guess some more than others, right? Definitely. Like, I would say Covet is a lot more rhythmically simple. I actually did an analysis of one of their songs as like just sort of music theory practice, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And trying to reverse engineer it essentially and be like, all right, well, why did you do this? Essentially. Mm-hmm. And like, it was not easy, to be clear. Like, because the rhythm is as a math rock song doesn't follow conventional quote unquote standard time signatures, right? So I think it was like, what was it? I think there ended up being 7 beats in the measure or something like that at the start. But it doesn't change too often. It tends to say that. And some songs are just 4/4, right? Which is that still math rock? I don't know. Whatever. But but with Fluffy, I'm pretty sure it's pretty consistently like wild and changes, relatively often.
And the crazy part is that Polyphia is extremely popular, right? Like they're like basically creating a genre. They're kind of breaking into like this metal space, like the old metalheads who don't really have any place to go because there hasn't been much innovation in like a long time, in rock music in general and guitar music, and they're latching onto this like very like other sound like that's never been heard in guitar music, and they're extremely popular. Like they're extremely popular, and so it's like crazy to know that like crazy time signatures and crazy rhythms and like these extremely different inspirations may be popular music, that's cool to hear people tolerate those sounds, like they're able to enjoy those sounds more, without saying, this sounds boring or something like that.
Interesting. I'll have to check them out.
Yeah, they're awesome.
I think maybe one other thing to add to, going off of this take and like advice to composers is, I mean, you kind of do, you think, you don't even think about it, but tempo and rhythm, are kind of, they go together too. So you can't forget like, the tempo or the speed of the music. And we've talked about this before, like, contrasting like modern action music with like James Bond and like, because it is rhythm and tempo are related also to your heartbeat. Like the pace in which you go is going to affect, like literally it affects you even if you're not going to get up and dance. Like it affects your breathing when you listen to something tends to fall in line with the tempo. Your heart rate also tends to move towards what you're listening to. So, things to keep in mind.
Yeah. Underrated is the biological response to art. Very underrated in general, cinema, there's a lot of things that happen to you as well. So, yeah. Any hot takes like that pop in your mind, Ben, to end it off? Like anything you thought of over the week or anything like that you want to share that might be spicy?
Week. Well, I decided I was going to take a bit of a plunge into some scores, James Newton Howard's, because if you've been listening to the show, you know that I'm not the world's biggest fan of his music, but I don't know, like his complete catalog. Annoyingly, I've discovered that like most people's favorite score by him is Signs, but it's not available anywhere in the United States. No platform has it. So,
interesting.
But I'm not gonna do that. So I'm like, well, I don't
know.
You
gotta pick up Signs.
Yeah. So I was listening to like Lady in the Water, which and the music is pretty highly rated, although the film I understand is a pretty universally panned. I don't know anything about the film, but I was listening. I read this plot synopsis, but which made no sense. And I listened to that. I'm like, see, it's just too like nondescript in my opinion. I don't know. I'm gonna keep diving into some other things, other than things that are not Signs apparently. But I don't know if anyone has a favorite James Newton Howard score that you would like me to listen to and like it's gonna change my mind. Please, I would like my mind to be changed, but
yeah, you caught some flack for from James. Out of any fan out there, the James Newton Howard fans out of all the people were the most vocal.
Well, look, I mean, I'm trying. So suggest something other than Signs that I can listen to, and I'm happy to change my mind.
Cool. All right. So we've been going on for a long time. Is there any significant news that I don't think I have any significant news? No, not really.
It's, it's technically not news, I guess, as it's not a new thing. But it's something I found out, so it's news to me. So I'm going to say it anyways. Roblox ends up taking with Roblox, as you know, like the way it works is it's like a platform, right? So people can make Roblox games and put it on the Roblox website. They take about a 70% cut out of all the profits made from those games.
Wow.
Which is about over twice industry standard. So that's disturbing. And I don't like Roblox anymore because I think they're taking advantage of kids essentially because they're kid developers who don't get it.
If you go to our Discord, you'll see a quote that was really strange from Roblox. I posted like a few weeks ago a quote from like Roblox like admin about like children like working with 30-year-olds, and I was like, this is not the play.
Where'd you post that?
On our Discord.
Really? What?
Yeah, in gaming, or either in gaming or in general. I'm not sure.
Let me just search Roblox in the search thing, and I'll probably come up see Roblox.
Yeah, I posted a quote from an article, I'm pretty sure. And they have interesting plans.
It says, quote, it must be a civil and safe platform that welcomes 6-year-olds at the same time as welcomes 30-year-olds who are working together. And you said, lol, what?
Like, who even says that statement with no, like, I don't know, like, just... that is not the play, Roblox. Stop it.
Yeah, Roblox.
Probably I mean, I'm sure it is true because I've worked like coaching, as a swim coach, coaching 6, 5, 6, 7-year-old kids, and they come in and they're so they do they play Roblox all day during COVID. Like, yeah. So they probably are interacting with.
And I like their sentiment is like pure. So they say, at least. I don't know. I don't trust these people.
I'm learning about this company. I'm just like, this is wild, dude. Like, it's not even like the 70% is not transparent. They take their fees on the way, essentially. If you get what I'm saying.
Oh my.
Yeah. As in. So essentially, like this is the biggest part, right? When you make your money, right? So there's a currency, a premium currency that you pay for on Roblox called Robux, right? You want to buy something in game, you buy Robux, and then you use that Robux to pay for whatever item, right? Whatever thing you want in the game, right? The Robux, so understandably, the Robux goes to the developer and Roblox takes a cut, right? This makes sense. It's already a high cut. It's already twice the standard, but it's, whatever, right? At least that makes sense. Not in the numbers, but in the fact that they do that, right? The thing that doesn't make sense is that they don't give it to them in cash. They give it to them in Robux, right? So which means you can withdraw Robux,
right? Dude, that's the worst part out of anything you said.
What'd you say?
That's the worst part. Huh? They don't even give them cash. That's the worst part.
No, okay, so they give them Robux. You can withdraw Robux as cash. Right? Oh, okay. But they take a cut from that. They take a cut from that again, right? So that's what I'm saying by on the way, right? As in they know they have to do this, right? Now, what if you don't want that cut? Well, you can buy something else on Roblox from another creator where that gets siphoned again from the 70%, right? And if it just gets traded around, if the Robux gets traded around a bunch of times, well, the Robux value is the same, but Roblox has consumed almost all the money back, essentially, that you were supposed to make, right?
Dude, that's nuts.
Yeah, and
Robux, is that what you're calling?
Yeah, Robux.
Are they inflation resistant?
I actually don't know, if they.
They're probably pegged to the dollar. I'm sure. I'm sure they're some multiple of $1 or something like that.
Yeah.
I maybe it would be worth it if it was inflation resistant.
just put some in there and just leave it there. Yeah. But not only that, but there's a minimum withdrawal amount. So you can't just. So if you're a small developer, you can't just make your money back. No. You have to be a big developer. Well, because once you're a big developer, the minimum is 1,000 Robux. I don't remember what that is in dollars. But I believe one Robux is less than $1, so you can assume it's more than $1,000. I'm pretty sure. So
Oh my
you can't be a
gosh.
small time developer. Essentially, they force you. They force you to keep going, right? Because if you make 500 Robux, well, you're halfway there. You might as well go the full, the full way, right? And then you withdraw. But if you get 1,000, right? Well, do you want to withdraw now? Because if you withdraw now, you're not going to be able to withdraw again until you have another 1,000, right? So maybe you just want to wait. It's very scammy.
What a
Apparently, this is
racket. That is an
this is something that
extremely...
existed in real life, like in outside the digital space. Some companies will essentially not pay their workers in dollars, but pay them in like company currency that they can spend on the company. That's illegal now. So it has a name. I forget what it's called.
Dude,
But
that's absolutely... you should do an episode just on this, because I am so
Roblox.
intrigued right now of how crazy of a mafia they've created at Roblox.
maybe I'll just make a video on predatory like publisher practice. Roblox, Steam, whatever.
Dude, that's insane.
But yeah, Roblox is by far the worst thing I've ever seen in terms of a platform. I mean,
So now think of that in light of we want 6-year-olds working with 30-year-olds. And it's going to be a great world unified by Facebook.
oh yeah, it's
Oh, what a world.
yeah. The law just hasn't caught up to the tech, right? Which is kind of sad because I mean it's just illegal. It's just legal in another form, which is strange. But
Well, they're independent contractors, right? That's how you get around anything.
hmm
All right. Any music news, Ben?
Nothing that I can think of. I'm gonna attempt to go to the Black Panther performance live to score a performance or live to film performance at Hollywood Bowl tomorrow. So I think that's the first live Marvel score. So
That's
might
awesome.
I think it is. So it should be fun.
Are you going to do a mixed media episode about it?
Yeah. Well, if I end up going, I have to make sure I can get there. But I do have that's a plan for tomorrow. So
Sweet.
Nice.
Yeah, we need more of that Hollywood. Even though I don't like Marvel, at least someone's doing it. Come on. Like, revive your cinematic, stuff. Do stuff like this. It's good.
Mhm.
All right. So that was a great episode of Mixed Media, if you ask me. We talked about a lot of different things. If you did not listen to... What?
I enjoyed that one. I don't know why. I think it was better than most, in my opinion.
Yeah. It was nice. It was nice. But if you did not see any of the other parts, it's because we split it into 3 different parts. And the way you see the other parts is you subscribe to the channel if you're on YouTube. You follow us if you're on Twitch, although the VOD, the only thing we can show right now is the raw version of the live stream. If you want to help us to have like proper VOD in Twitch, if for some reason you don't want to use YouTube, which is completely respectable, you got to go to mixedmedia.locals.com so that we can pay for a Twitch membership so that we can actually do that. And that's a good plug for locals. If you're on Rumble, especially, you would love for us to be live. Our numbers on Rumble just increasingly climb, especially, our views and like our Rumble numbers, they just increasingly climb. And I really appreciate our Rumble family. Ben wasn't here when I said this last time, but we got our first comment on Rumble and it was the word nice. So thank you for the comment on Rumble. But we kind of want more comments on Rumble. So if you could just leave us a comment if you're watching us on Rumble, if you enjoyed this. But also, more importantly, we want to be on Rumble live because we could be the only live podcast on Rumble. That's crazy. Like the only live, essentially radio show on Rumble. I would freaking love that. So you got to go to mixedmedia.locals.com. All the dollars that go there go right back into the show, basically. Into helping us to expand and reach more ears, more faces, more eyeballs, So that really helps us out. If you're listening on podcast, or if you're not listening on podcast, we're available on all podcasting platforms. If you're in the car and you want to save bandwidth, if you want to pre-save episodes onto your phone, download them, whatever the heck. Podcasts are extremely useful and underrated. And I think podcasts are going to continue to expand into the future. We're actually probably seeing a very nascent form of audio content, which is extremely exciting. So we're on podcasting networks, but if you are listening on podcasts already, we love you. Love that. And I see a lot of people are starting to add us to your auto download list, which is awesome to see. As soon as I post something, the download numbers are no longer 0, and I have to wait for people to come in and actually download the episode. But as soon as I upload it, I see a number. That shows me you guys are auto downloading our episodes, and I freaking love that. So what I would love even more is if we saw you in our Discord, which is for everyone, where we can congregate all of our platforms. We can keep the conversation going throughout the week. And I mean, if you want to share a piece of art that you're working on, it doesn't have to be anything we talk about. It can just be, I don't know, a drawing you made or whatever the heck you do. Just share it with us on the platform. We want to hear it. We love supporting our fellow artists. We're all kind of scrapping it out ourselves to do what we love to do, and we want to support you doing what you love to do as well. So with that, I'll say thank you for watching.
Thanks. See ya.
See ya.